My parents demanded I pay rent or move out at 18 while my older siblings lived for free. Now they're shocked that I chose to leave instead. I'm female, 18, and my two older siblings, Becky and Cass, 24 and 28, are being given preferential treatment by my parents, and I think it's really unfair. We live in a big house in the suburbs, and growing up, Becky and I shared a room. Cass also stayed with us until she graduated college and then moved out when she was 21, then back here, and I got two separate rooms. Now I basically have a private space in this house that I really like and enjoy. But due to my parents' desire to retire early, they want me to start paying a pretty exorbitant amount as rent to stay. Even though my two sisters were here, and one still is, rent-free. Let me explain. So, Cass stayed at home during college because she didn't want to go through the hassle of moving out and finding a roomie leasing, yada yada yada. She left when she graduated because her job was out of state and she needed to leave. Becky also stayed at home during her college years, but she hasn't been able to find any good work and has fallen into a slump. She doesn't even bother looking for jobs anymore and just stays at home all day. My parents are worried about her mental health, and I am too, but their way of dealing with it is just to walk on eggshells around her all the time. Nobody mentions her unemployment or the fact that she's still staying with her parents. I don't think this will help her change her circumstances, but at least it will stop her from spiraling or lashing out. Anyways, my parents were looking at their finances with their accountant last year and realized they could retire around the time I turned 18. It's always been a goal for them to retire before turning 60, and it's possible for them now with one small catch. It won't be possible if I'm staying at their house because the added cost of upkeep, groceries, etc. isn't in their monthly living budget, something they've already stretched thin because of Becky. To deal with this, they would either need to keep working for the next 5 to 7 years or come up with a way to pinch pennies with two other dependent people in the house. Now, I also know that my parents really want to remodel the house once everyone has left the nest. My room is going to be turned into Mom's study room, and Becky's room was supposed to be turned into a man cave. Neither is going to happen now in the foreseeable future, and I also felt bad that my parents couldn't achieve their dream. In a way, I also felt guilty because I was an unplanned kid, and it meant that they had to spend a lot more than they expected on me. I tried to understand that point of view and did my best to mitigate the financial stress they had. I was always a super bright kid, and I really buckled up and worked hard in the fields that interested me to get a partial academic scholarship. I broke the news to my parents, and they were happy for me. They even took me out for a celebratory dinner. I was feeling really proud about being able to contribute towards my parents' financial stability. But at the dinner, what my dad asked of me made me upset. As we were waiting for the check, he said, "Up, this surprised your mother and I. You're a lot more mature than we thought, and we think you can take on even more responsibility. I discussed this with your mom and well, we want you to pay rent when you turn 18. I thought he was joking at first, but he was serious. I was taken aback because we weren't in any financial trouble, and none of my siblings had to do the same thing. When I brought that up, my mom chimed in and said circumstances were different earlier. I mean, we hadn't projected this much spending when Cass went to college, and Becky, well, you know that she's in a rough spot. We just need a little money to keep things on track, and if you go to an apartment or dorm, you'll have to pay rent anyways. I know you have some money saved up, and you can always get a part-time job." I didn't really know what to say, and we agreed to discuss this later. When that dinner happened, my 18th birthday was 2 months away. In those 2 months, my relationship with my parents got a whole lot worse. They gave me a monthly rent that was super high, like much higher than renting out an apartment with a few friends. When I asked about it, my mom said she set the price after looking at jobs I could do and based on the things we do for you. She wants me to pay for the fact that groceries are bought by them, and they do the dishes and clean around the house more often than I do. First off, why is she charging me like I'm going to live in a hotel? I literally pull so much weight around the house. I do chores, walk the dog, drive down and get groceries when needed, and my sister just lays around at home all day. My resentment against Becky flared up during this time because it just felt unfair that I was being treated so clinically, while the other sister who lived at home rent-free way longer than she needed to was being given so much understanding. But if I brought it up, I would just be labeled cruel. Ugh. I confided in Cass about this, and she's definitely on my side. I mean, the fact that she got to live there rent-free, as did Becky, sets a reasonable precedent for me to expect the same thing. Hell, I even worked my ass off to make sure tuition wouldn't be as big of a burden on my parents as I thought. When I brought this up with Mom and Dad, they just said that, technically, you'll be an adult OP. Adults pay rent. If you don't like it, you're welcome to move out. Oh my God, they were so condescending about it too. And the double standards when it comes to Becky. She's clearly their favorite child. I know that it seems spoiled to not want to pay rent. I mean, after all, My parents are still paying for college, but I don't get it. Why can't they just wait a few more years? All this talk of me pulling my weight is really making me feel like a burden, and God knows I had enough trouble with that. After tons of arguments with no change in my parents' behavior, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I secretly researched apartments near my college and even found roommates by being active on the college's social media and informal Discord servers. The cost of living, with rent, utilities, groceries, everything, was still like $100 cheaper than the rent my parents were asking from me. So, on my 18th birthday, a moving truck showed up in front of the house. My parents were confused until I told them since I'm an adult, I'm going to be moving out of the house. They both looked like I had slapped them across the face and acted like I was betraying them, even though I only did what they snarkily implied. I've moved into my new apartment, and I and my roomies had a little party to celebrate my newfound adulthood since everyone already knew the story of how douchey my parents were. My phone has been blowing up with calls from my parents all this time, but I haven't replied. I'm starting to feel a little guilty about how I moved out so abruptly because it's clear they didn't get time to process that I was going to leave. AITA for moving out? Update 1. I am loving college. This place is great and I'm doing really well financially too. Even before I was 18, I was doing freelance work, video editing. That's where my savings come from. And I've been able to dedicate even more time to that after graduating from high school. I make decent enough money to have a rainy day fund and fun money after rent and everything else. I'll say this, I'm definitely not missing staying at home. My roommates are also nice. Sometimes we argue about things like doing the dishes or the correct way to put TP on the hanger, paper facing out for life. But they do their chores eventually, and nobody's a massive slob. However, when I finally spoke to my parents, it was clear that they had been seething all this time. They both said that I had been super disrespectful and this wasn't the right way to do things, and they threatened me by saying that if I didn't come back and live under their terms, they would stop paying for my college. It was nice while it lasted, guys, but I don't think I would be able to stomach that. I don't know what my options are right now. I guess I could take a loan, but I'm not sure how to go about it. I feel like I've been backed into a corner by their threats, and I might have to go back and pay them rent like they want. I genuinely don't want to do it because I feel like this whole episode has made me lose a lot of respect for my parents. But I'm running out of options. Update 2. I got a call from Cass, and I was really happy to know that she went off on Becky and my parents were threatening to cut my college tuition. Apparently, it started after. Becky called her complaining that stuff doesn't get done around the house because I did a lot of chores, and that's when she scolded her. Eventually, our parents got on the call and Cass found out that they were thinking of cutting my college tuition. She went ballistic. She told me that until my parents apologize to me, she's not speaking to them, and that she is also going to fly in after a week or so to sort this whole mess out. I haven't heard from my parents about this episode though, but she advised me to simply cut them off. I'm so happy that my sister is there for me, and I'm going to wait and see how we can figure out how to move forwards. Update 3. Cass has just left after staying at my apartment for a couple of days. I heard her say she was proud of me, and I felt reassured about the choices I'm making. She also co-signed on a student loan with me and walked me through the process. I won't have to pay it back until I get a job. And I also got her word that she'll help me out if anything happens to me in college or to my living situation. Both of us are still NC with my parents because they haven't bothered calling me or apologizing, but honestly, I could care less. NTA. Your parents are using you as a free maid in a piggy bank. NTA. Why are your parents acting like keeping you around the house is a chore? If anyone is the burden, I would say it's Becky, although of course I don't know the full situation. You did the right thing by moving out and showing your parents the reality of living without you. Next story. I like cooking. When I'm with my mom's stepdad, I cook a lot with my stepdad's mom, my step-grandma. But when I'm at my dad's, that mom's house, one weekend a month plus some holidays and summers, things are different. My stepmom is not a good cook. I'm sorry, but she's not. She has sensory issues. She doesn't cook meat, barely any spices, and a bunch of other things. She also just undercooks, overcooks, undersalts, all of that. In the past, I've kind of tried to help her and cook with her and being like, what if we add lemon? But first of all, she doesn't like my input. She wants to do things her way. And second of all, there's sensory issues, so she doesn't want to cook differently than she does. If she ate what I made, she would not like it. At their house, my stepmom only cooks foods that she's comfortable with, which since my dad never cooks, means any home-cooked meal is something she eats. She doesn't care what any one of us eats when she's not around, like a friend's house or takeout. Officially, if we're like at a restaurant or if I make my own food for dinner, she also doesn't care. Like if we all go to a restaurant, they wouldn't stop me from ordering a burger, but she would be kind of uncomfortable. Not mad, just uncomfortable. For her, it's the smell mostly, but it's also kind of a mental thing. I don't know how to explain it. She's in therapy. That's why I think she's able to pretend like it's okay, but because it bothers her, what would happen is that my dad would order vegetarian. Their kids, 3/4 would get something like kid-sized grilled cheeses, and I would maybe order like a chicken burrito instead of a steak. Or like if my dad got takeout, he would throw away the bag in the downstairs trash or leave it in his car so she didn't have to smell it. I've been cooking more and more. I like cooking and do it a lot at home, but like I said, her food is so bad. That's also a motivator. I eat meat and also cook with spices and strong flavors, but my dad came into my room last night and said, out of courtesy, could I stop cooking so much, and tried to eat what I was served more. I said to my dad that her food was both bad and boring. I wouldn't say this to her face, obviously. My dad said I needed to go with the flow and couldn't always have my own way, and to be honest, I can't act like I haven't noticed her not being anywhere in the kitchen, like going to the bedroom, if I'm making myself dinner, to be honest. But I said basically that this was her problem, not mine. Why should I have to cater to what someone who isn't even eating the food? He said I was being rude and disrespectful to her by pushing her limits, and said it was her home too. And yeah, I could make bland the food that's more safe, but what's the point? The food is for me. NTA. You cook and eat what you want. She cooks and eats what she wants. If your cooking produces strong smells, you should make a basic effort to keep the smell contained. That's just good sense, operating in a shared kitchen space. Beyond that, if stepmom has a problem looking at your food or thinking about your food, then it's her problem. NTA. I do feel like there is a compromise somewhere here, since you all have to live in the same space and both want to be comfortable there. Maybe you cook a little less, or if there is a particular smell she absolutely hates, avoid that or let her know in advance when you're cooking meat so she can take a walk. I don't think you should have to eat bland, undercooked food that you don't like all the time. However, you should be considerate of the other people around you to an extent. Next story. I, 33, female. I'm getting married in a little over 6 weeks. I announced my engagement last year in January and asked my best friends to be bridesmaids. One friend, Lucy, 32, female, was already pregnant, would have a 6-month-old at the wedding, and a month or two after another, Sarah, 33, female, announced she was pregnant, would have a 3-month-old at the wedding, none of which bothered me in the slightest. I requested the babies didn't come to the ceremony, but are more than welcome for the rest of the day. Both babies have been born now, and both Lucy and Sarah have been exclusively breastfeeding. Lucy has eventually managed to get her little one to feed from a bottle. This is of her own back with no pressure from me. I understand the children are young, and it can be difficult to leave them for a full day. Just in time for the hen party, which is Saturday. Sarah is having trouble with this and has announced that her significant other will be around the bars we will be in with her baby, so he can bring the baby to her to feed. I'm not sure this is appropriate and told her one bar specifically doesn't allow children, to which she replied, "Oh, significant other will have to go next door then." Turns out she had planned for her significant other and baby to be in the bars with us, just at a different table. I told her if it's that much stress for her, maybe just come to lunch and then go home to her child. She said that no, she doesn't mind breastfeeding her at the bar. It will be fine. The other bridesmaids and I were quite confused and said, "Surely you're not suggesting bringing your 2-month-old child on a hen party?" I told her straight there would be drinking, swearing, and God knows what else going on, it's just not appropriate. Which she took offense and is now hardly talking to any of us. My question is, was I too harsh? Is it okay for her significant other to follow us around bars and restaurants with their baby? Ada? Edit, to be clear, she won't be drinking at the bachelorette, so no problem with breastfeeding. No smoking in bars in our state. Edit 2, thank you for the opposing opinions, some I hadn't considered. NTA, but I think there's a compromise to be made here. It sounds like she's really going out of her way to try and be there for you. I get why you don't want him in the actual venues you'll be in, but if he can hold up nearby and she's willing to pop out every 3 hours, then that kind of sounds like a win-win. Nah. I mean, that doesn't sound like much fun for her, but I suppose if she wants to step away for a bit every few hours to feed her baby, that's not the worst thing in the world. Not saying breastfeeding being a parent is a medical issue, but in this context, I would say it is similar to someone who has to step away to check their insulin every couple of hours. A pain for her, but not a burden on anyone else. It's not as if she is planning on bringing the baby around with her in a stroller. I can see why this might feel weird to you, knowing she may be distracted by this, having her significant other as a semi-participant in the hand party. But it honestly sounds like she tried to come up with the least intrusive way possible to still participate in the hen party while also caring for her child. I can pretty much assure you that if this ends up being a problem for anyone, it is going to be her and her significant other, not you or the rest of the party. I doubt they will last more than a few places before this becomes too much for them or the baby. To be honest, I am guessing that she is struggling right now. It is incredibly hard for people who are exclusively breastfeeding because it severely limits the amount of time they can have for themselves. As much as she loves her baby, she's probably dying for some adult time. I don't think you need to change any of your plans for your hen party or alter your behavior in any way during the hen party to accommodate her plan. But I do think it would be gracious of you to tell her that if she wants to try and make this work, that it is okay with you.